Now, moving on to the last part, since we've covered TRT and the first compounds taken if you're doing a cycle or TRT, let's move on to now. People know that people should understand a bit test. Hopefully, people have more of an understanding of test now, whether you're using TRT or your first cycle. And then moving from that, this is not to do with TRT. This is to do with people that chose to do the blasting, or taking an actual cycle or course, cruise, whatever you want to call it. I don't like cycle because that's cylindrical. It means you're coming back around. I prefer the term course or phase of test.
Yeah, yep, you could
What
call it
what
that.
compound what compound would be the obviously educational purposes only, everyone. What compound would come next after testosterone when people, I wouldn't say exhausted their dose, yeah, but like when it gets to a point where you're like, it's it
You're
might
at a
be it
point where you
might be
can't
it might be
escalate.
a better option to look at something else rather than increase the test.
Yep. So generally what I'll tell people is like when they first use testosterone, find that high point for them, right? So what's the highest dose you can tolerate without side effects? And then we can look at adding in other compounds. So, say I have a competitor, they're taking 300 milligrams of testosterone. We've gotten to a point where E2 is starting to rise. And I'm like, okay, at this point, we might need to look at something that's going to be an aromatase inhibitor. So, these can be drugs like primobolan, this can be a drug like EQ. Now, both of those are active aromatase inhibitors within the body. They will actually lower serum estrogen.
Mm.
So then, of course, you have another version, which is another DHT injectable, which is Masteron. Now, any one of these threes would probably be fine for, say, someone that's more of a beginner to add into a cycle. Probably more so Masteron and Primo. Just they're a little bit safer on the risk profile.
So the
Um,
only reason I wouldn't recommend EQ is just because it's not human study.
yeah, so look, there is some human studies on it, not a whole lot, but me personally, any sort of anabolic that you're taking is going to have an expression on the kidney to increase
Yeah.
EPO,
The
right?
funny thing
So
is
it's
my
like,
my second compound was EQ.
yeah, a lot of people's were.
But
Um,
again, it's also what's available.
yeah, what you
That's
can get, what you can
yeah.
afford, what is legitimate, what's not
Yeah,
legitimate.
because
These are all
sometimes it's not
things
what you
that
can get, it's
come.
what you trust.
Yeah, and that's why obviously we haven't mentioned it yet, but people should absolutely get their drugs tested. But we'll
Mhm.
we'll talk about that
Yeah,
later.
that's
Um,
I'll put that down as well. Testing.
When it comes to, that second compound, personally, my favorite is primobolan. It's medically approved for humans to use. It's
Yeah,
going to be, an AI. It's going to lower that serum estrogen. It's very anabolic, not androgenic really at all. So,
it's probably good
me,
for a like you. Sorry to interrupt. It's very good probably for a second compound first time as well because it is a little bit
yeah,
weaker. You can run it at lower doses, whereas
yeah.
the second one's like Marsh, you're probably going to add a bit more than like Primo. You might add 1 or 200, whereas Marsh you might start adding 200, 400.
Yeah, personally, I would prefer the Primo over the
Yeah.
Masteron just because I'm going to get the benefit of the, estrogen control from that. So it's going to remove my need to add in something like, say, an AI like
Mhm.
Aromazin or Arimidex.
Yeah.
So generally, I prefer to stay away from those. Of course, if I have to
Yeah.
use
For
them, I
some people
will.
that are
But
listening, AI means estrogen suppression.
yeah, so that basically
Aromatase
is going
inhibitor.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, inhibit the ability to aromatize to estrogen. Whereas like something like Masteron, it's not actually inhibiting serum levels, it's just competing on that AR receptor.
Mm.
So it's like you're going to increase that level of androgens whilst potentially decreasing that level of estrogen slightly in the body,
Which is
because of,
also better for people with the higher body fat because they won't convert to estrogen.
yeah, yeah. Generally, like, I'm going to pick Primo, I'd
Mm.
say 99% of the time.
Mhm.
If you're a Povo, Masteron's going to be just as good, or an EQ is probably going to be my third choice just because of
Yeah.
that EPO effect that it
Yeah.
has. Because, strokes, heart disease, all that sort of stuff is obviously a side effect from P.E.D.s, and anytime we can reduce that risk profile, we want to do that.
And
So,
and and I just don't want people to think, oh, which one's the best for muscle growth? They're all going to grow. As long as your training nutrition is good,
yeah.
the dose will be dependent, but they're all going to be pretty similar.
When it comes to things like those three, like I would probably say milligram for milligram, they're
Yeah.
pretty similar
Yeah, pretty
tissue
similar.
growth. Um, Obviously other drugs are going to be
Mm.
way different, and
But
anyone
I'd
that,
say that test you get more growth out of test than the DHTs
oh,
across the board.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I would say like effect wise, you're going to see more of an effect from
Yeah.
testosterone, but you're also going to see a higher risk profile as well. Like, if you take 100 milligrams of testosterone and 100 milligrams of primobolan, the risk profile on that primo is probably going to be like a fair bit safer, probably 50%. So,
And when you take adding these second compounds in, you don't just stop taking tests and take this. This is an addition
no,
because the
yeah.
test base provides the estrogen, and like you can't take any of these without test because you tank your estrogen. Just so
Yeah,
people
because
know that.
so all those DHT drugs like primobolan and masteron, they're of course
That's,
suppressive of the
yeah,
HTPA
they're all
axis, right?
stacked.
Yeah. So we actually layer these, and
Mm,
this is why it's so important to work with the coach because it's understanding, that lever system that I spoke about. It's like, knowing which levers to pull at which time. So it's like,
mm.
say you've taken your testosterone dose up and you've escalated to a point where you feel you can't take any more. Maybe E2 is starting to climb up. So we're like, all right, cool. We're at the point now where we need some more milligrams. I'm going to just slide in a small dose of Primo. And people will be like, oh, how much do you add? Like 500? I'm like, no, you can start small.
And
100
yeah,
milligrams, is going to be more than enough to encourage growth. So it's
yeah.
like making sure that you're not just fucking stacking shit for the sake of
I
stacking shit.
want to just go over those dosages because we're not recommending any doses. We're just throwing out numbers so people have an understanding. But
Yeah.
if you're on 200 tests and you had 100 primo and you think like that's a 50% increase. So
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
just so people understand that like, oh, 100 meg primo is a lot. If you're taking 200 tests and you hadn't, that's 50% more anabolic. So I think people just need to get ideas in their head that it's like if you had $100 and someone gave you 50, that's a lot. Now you've got
Yeah. You got
150, like
150.
so people need to just understand like small escalations make a huge difference.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be much,
Yeah.
like, and this is why I say blood test is so important because if you escalate that testosterone dose 50 milligrams, that might have a huge impact on your E2 because, maybe you've gotten to that point of diminishing returns, right? So it's like all of a sudden every 50 milligram increase doubles the amount of E2 conversion.
Mm,
So it's like you need to really make sure that you are keeping, an eye on those numbers all the time. And it's
mm.
like blood tests are expensive. P.E.D.s are not to be played around with. You need to pay for these extra things. So
Yeah, so
personally,
yeah, no, keep going.
like if I'm going to build out a first cycle, it's going to be test only.
Yeah,
I'm probably going to be limited by the level of E2 that you can handle, and that's going to be different for each person. I'm going to be looking at, side effect profiles that you have, and I'm going to be like, all right, cool, it's time to cuff it.
yeah,
And then we'll just leave it at that. Say we're halfway through a cycle, like say we're halfway through your first cycle, right? We'll just write it out.
yeah.
Then we might come back down to your TRT and do a health phase.
Mm,
You shouldn't need to do a health phase, but we'll have a break anyway,
yeah.
just to let your body refresh itself. And then we will get to that point where we're like, all right, it's time to push the weight up again. And then we're going to add like a basic compound to that testosterone that we added in last
Yeah,
time.
but you might even go 2 years. You might do 4 cycles on tests before you even think about another compound.
Oh,
Like
bro.
you might go 200, 250, 300, 350.
Yep. And
And
now, like, there might be guys that go higher, right?
yeah,
Like, like you can
you only
look
need
at
to
using.
like you were saying, you test where the limits are. You might run tests all the way till you get up to a gram, and then all of a sudden, then you say it's like, that could be 3, 4 years. You only
Yep.
yeah, but someone might need to add it earlier because they have the
Might
estrogen
even be
issues.
longer.
Yeah, and then someone might have to need their second cycle because as soon as you up the test, that you run into estrogen issues. So then they need
Yep.
the second compound. So just people understand that just because you're only running tests, that doesn't mean you're getting any less. Like if you can run 750 tests without a second compound, that can be better than having to run tests with a primo.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be cheaper. Like, obviously, it's not going to provide the same anabolic to androgenic ratio that the other two would, but it's a hell of a lot less complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot less things going on that you need to worry about,
Mm,
and that might be the best cycle for you.
mm.
There are other things that you can, through polypharmacy add in without adding in another anabolic, like,
People just, I think some people are just too quick to jump from the test train.
yeah,
When you
yeah.
can, let's face it, the average gym goer, non-competitor, you can get a lot of growth from tests over a couple of years before you need to worry about the compounds.
I think every person in the gym, other than people that are competitors, could probably reach their dream physique on 350
Yeah,
milligrams a test.
yeah, I agree.
And
But
like maybe a little
they'd
bit of
have to
growth.
just nail in the nutrition and training too much, so they rather take
Oh,
more.
it's too hard,
Yeah,
right?
it's too
It's
hard.
too hard. It's easier to
Anyway,
take double the amount.
yeah, so obviously that's why people take other compounds because you either run into a side effect or you just, yeah, there's reasons why more muscle growth, stagnate training, stagnate growth, side effects, can't run test high. That's why we run other compounds. Um, so obviously you got the milder versus harsher. Like saying Primo's mass EQ a little bit different. I wouldn't say really mild or harsher. It's just depending on the different have different estrogen control, but it also depends on the individual.
Yeah, they do have like a slightly different impact on cholesterol as well.
Yeah,
I
but
find
that's also
master ones,
individual as well.
yeah, I find masters usually more harsh on lipid profiles than
Yeah.
primo, and that's probably why it is medically approved.
But I don't want
But
to talk about that because again, that's we don't know till you see the blood work. So there's no point
yeah,
really covering that because it's all individual. It has to be assessed.
yeah,
Um,
it's so hard, eh?
yeah, so we've covered the DHT derivatives. Obviously, they can make you a little bit, depending on how lean you are, make you some can make you look a little bit harder. Some have some a bit more aggressive as well. Or we won't cover the 19 ors because you don't nobody's taking them in the second cycle.
Yeah, fuck no. And
Orals,
that's the biggest thing is like the
yeah.
biggest issue is if people try and take that sort of stuff in their first cycle, they're gonna fuck it up.
Yeah, let's not cover orals either. We'll do that in another one.
Do you want me to cover like how they work like a little bit better,
Yeah,
just
you
so
yeah,
speed
just
up?
let me finish this. So like we said, plateau results, goals, peer pressure is one as well. But that shouldn't be one. Uh, Availability, like you were saying.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, like another thing, like just like tests, you got to consider mental health with these things.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
then different half-lives, which you won't cover. So yeah, you go on about how the DHTs work now compared to test.
Oh, it's so basically all steroids work the same, right? Like when it comes to testosterone and it comes to DHTs and all these sorts of things, they're all working in a very similar way when it comes to actually building muscle tissue. The drug itself is binding to the androgen receptor, right? And that's translocating across to the nucleus. And through that expression, we're going to upregulate muscle protein synthesis, yeah? So from there, we're going to increase nitrogen retention, and that's going to create like more of a positive balance within the tissue. So it's more likely to be building tissue than breaking tissue. So, that's essentially what we need for anabolism or tissue growth. And then with that higher level of nitrogen, we're going to accelerate the rate that we recover at. And that's going to be through reduced inflammation within the tissue, faster glycogen replenishment, enhanced satellite activity. You know, Strength is going to be increased as well, just due to the neurological adaptations that come from taking an androgenic anabolic. You're going to have way better unit recruitment, like muscle recruitment, and then you're going to see more cross-sectional like tissue growth, right? Because you're training harder, you're training more often, you're recovering better, you know, you're able to train at a level that would be way higher than what you normally would be with quote unquote natural levels of
Mhm.
testosterone. Of course, you need to have, the high protein to match that stuff, as well as, the micronutrients like B vitamins and the metabolism. But at the end of the day, basically all steroids work, essentially in the same sort of way. And most people will say milligram per milligram. Most anabolics will build the same level of tissue. There are obviously some drugs that personally I think are way different, but they also come with way different risk profiles. So,
But that's why
you know,
stack design's so individual because it's not
absolutely.
like you're saying milligram for milligram and they all basically work the same. That's why it's at the end of the day, it's you got to design something that fits for you so you feel
Yep.
good and your all your health markers are the best they can be while running that because
Yeah.
what you're running and what you feel good on, what you gain muscle on is different to what somebody else feels good on.
Yeah, and I see a lot of experts or quote unquote experts talking about, that milligram for milligram, and I'm like, okay, great. I'll give you an example where that isn't even close to true. I'm going to take 1 milligram of primobolan and I'm going to compare that to 1 milligram of superdrol.
Hmm.
Those two drugs are so similar, right?
Yeah. Injecting
superdrol is
those
a methylated version of
methylated.
masteron, right?
Well,
So you're like, okay,
D-Bol's methylated version of EQ.
yeah, and they're like, oh, it should build tissue at the same rate, but it's like, no way. 1 milligram of superdrol fucking destroys
You
one
won't be
milligram of
eating.
masteron.
You feel sick. Can
I can eat like crazy on it.
you? Oh,
Yeah,
even
yep.
after
And
4 weeks, your liver will be done.
nah, fine. My liver values never move.
Well,
It's so weird.
I've only ever had an issue with eating at the end of a 4 week cycle of Anadrol and methyltren.
Yeah, the methyl train would have done you in.
I actually felt
But
sore around it. I actually feel sore around the liver.
Yeah. But you know, like this is the thing, right? Like these people consider themselves to be experts, and I'm like, yes, cool. Like, you know, we can look at things like increases in MPS, etc. But it's
Mm.
like, I know that if I take 40 milligrams of Superdrol or I take 40 milligrams of Masteron, I can go into the gym and I can train way harder
Yeah,
on the Superdrol.
yeah,
But I have to take into account, am I going to be able to use that long term?
yeah.
Am I going to be able to eat? What is my risk profile? And that's why when we talk about this stuff, when we're saying like you need to use a coach, because we know what things are going to be, you know, the easiest for you to get, the easiest for you to tolerate, the safest to use long
Not only that,
term.
you've done countless clients, so you've got some experience. You're like, generally, this is what happens on this drug. Generally, like you've instead of them laying all the groundwork, you've already got all that groundwork there, so you know what to try first to to
I
speed up
reckon
the
I've
process.
I reckon I've written 2,000 plus protocols.
That's what I mean. So you instead of them
Easy.
shooting in the dark, you're like, look, this is what I find best for people on average. So let's try
Yeah,
this
generally
first.
generally it'll be like, all right, this is what works for majority of people. I
Yeah.
know this is going to be safe for 50% of the population straight off the bat.
Mm.
And then from there we can titrate up the dose,
Yeah.
right? Because these are things that aren't new. You know,
Mm.
testosterone is old as fuck. It's as
Yeah.
old as time. You know, so it's like, yeah, maybe in the 70s and 80s we didn't have a lot of knowledge around this sort of stuff, but by now, you know, like it's been 50 plus years, man. We know how this stuff works. We know how to use it, how to utilize it in the best way. And that's why like when people start trying to say like, "Oh, I've got a new method," I just laugh at them because I'm like, "Bro, there's 50 people that have already done that 10
Yeah.
times."
Uh,
You know? So like working with someone that has adequate qualifications, you know, experience long term, has proof of their work, and not just proof of their work, but proof of safe work. If you're looking at a coach and they have female clients, and 50% of their female clients have negative effects like viralization,
mm.
that's not the coach you want to pick.
Yeah.
You know, you need to pick a coach that understands what they're doing, but also understands how to, you know, do it safely.
Mm.
It's one thing if someone is like Beans, right? And she's competing as a physique competitor at the highest level of, you know, bodybuilding. You would expect some viralization.
Yeah.
But if someone's a bikini competitor
Yeah.
and they've got 20 or 30 bikini girls and they all have the same sort of viralization, you're looking at that and you're like, that coach doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
Even if you like B, even with the goals, like her coach still says, "Are you okay with taking? I recommend this. What do you
yeah,
want?"
absolutely, you
If
know.
a coach ever pushes drugs on you and says, "This is what you're taking," it should always be a recommendation. Even I say to clients, I'm like, "This is what
Yeah.
I recommend. You can take it if you want, but that's what I recommend you take. Nothing should ever be pushed on you either."
Yeah, it should always just be provided as like a potential guidance.
Yeah.
You know, it's never going to be like you have to do this. It
Mm.
should be like this is a framework that you can work within, and wherever you want to be is wherever you're going to be.
Yeah.
And it's like if you want to take less, take fucking less. You
Yeah.
know, I can tell you now, I'm very much someone that's like less is more, especially long term. So, you know, like everyone's risk profile is going to be different. I work with guys that want to be Olympians, and I work with guys that, you know, just want to feel good.
Mm.
So it's like those two things are going to look completely different. And it's like, as a person, you know, that's stuff that you should be looking at. And like, does this coach have the experience that I need? You know, do they have a proven track record? Do they, you know, have enough time to
Mm.
even have built any experience? If you're hiring a coach and they're 22 years old,
And I'm telling you that, yeah,
I have more experience in the gym than they have total life
yeah,
experience. So it's like, you know, you need to look at not only how smart they are, because there's a lot of people, right, that are, you know, 22, 23 years old with degrees, they're intelligent people, but it's like you haven't been in the field long enough applying the things that you learnt practically to understand how to look at this, because it's very different, right, applying P.E.D.s for medical use
well, not only that,
compared
I
to,
think, like just to reframe what you're saying, if you just want to like get better in the gym and you're not going to take any enhancements, like if you're happy to go to an experienced coach, that's cool. But if you ever think about taking any type of performance enhancing drugs, you damn well better do the research on your coach.
oh,
Like I'm saying,
absolutely.
like do not go with an inexperienced coach or a young coach for drugs. Period.
No. And even some of the older coaches, right? Like look at
Yeah, that's what
their
I'm saying. Look at their experience in
history.
the game,
Yeah.
and have they taken themselves? What have they experienced? How many enhanced people have they taught? And like you
Yeah.
said, like you were saying before, look at their clientele.
Yeah.
Yeah, are they
Like I've
healthy?
got, I would say probably 50% of my clients are females, if not more. I've never ever ever touch wood had a single side effect from a female client
Yeah.
in my entire career.
So,
Not a single one. And it's like if you turn to a coach and it's like, you know, let's say they have a couple of athletes and they're amateurs, right? At a low level. Maybe they're like a girl that's like outside the first call out, right, of a state show,
mm,
and they have viralization. It's like, why?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And you need to look at that sort of stuff and be like, all right, cool. That's probably a coach I'm going to avoid.
Hmm.
And there's like, you also need to take into account what is that coach's clients doing, right? Like if you're someone that's looking at a coach and they've got all high-end competitors, they're all at the Olympia level, most likely they're going to have some form of viralization,
Yeah, they're
or
competing in the
people.
top of their elites. Yeah.
Yeah,
They,
exactly.
yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, you need to be careful when you're picking your coach because it's like you can't judge them based off of something that might be due to the client's
But that,
choice.
that's like you were saying before, it goes back to your goals.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're a average Joe and you're looking to, optimize your health or, you're looking to run a small cycle, you're going to be fine in most instances,
Mm,
but it's definitely you need to do your research for
yeah.
sure.
All right, I think we covered a lot. That's good. I'll break that down into 2 or 3 episodes because that's a lot. I'll try to do that in parts, two
Yeah.
or three parts. But so again, I just want to alliterate. Okay, now I can't even talk. This wasn't advice.
No,
This was just educational in our experiences. Don't take anything from this.
I'm not your doctor.
Yeah, we're not your doctor.
No.
But yeah. So if you're thinking about touching hormones, like I said, like we were saying, do your research, try and understand what we said, do your own research, look at coaches, make sure you're ready. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the
Do
disclaimer.
your prior research and
Your due diligence.
Going on Google isn't research.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, no, that's good.
You
No,
know,
look up Google
Go-
Scholar. If you're going to
yeah,
actually do proper research, Google Scholar and look up medical journals and like medical
yeah,
studies, proper
yeah,
research.
yeah. But like
Don't
in
go to
most
YouTube and
instances,
be like, what did Jay Cutler take during his
yeah,
Olympia run?
I can tell you 2 grams of everything.
Yeah.
He
Cheers.
actually,
What? What do you say?
oh, I was going to say he actually took way less than most people thought.
Oh, yeah, of course they all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll let you go, man. I'm taking up too much of your time
That was good though.
already.
Yeah, hang on, somebody stopped recording. Yeah, it was good. Oh.
But yeah, like.